All right, so this is Imperialism number 5. We are going to be finishing up the Spanish-American War. The war is getting started. We're going to the Philippines, then we're going to talk about the Caribbean, the Rough Riders, and the Treaty of Paris of 1898 in this one. Might be a little longer. So remember, we finished the last video with talking about the war is going to start. But the United States, and again, remember, it's against Spain, not Cuba. Spain thought we were going to go to Cuba because that's what everything was about, but instead, we go to the Philippines and we attack the Spanish fleet there. Needless to say, Spain was not expecting it in the Philippines. So, the Philippines also wanted freedom from Spain, and George Dewey, who was our Commodore, he was our person in charge of our Navy, he was the one that was he was the person in charge of attacking Manila. He destroys all the Spanish ships there in just a few hours. It does not take very long, just a few months, for Spain to surrender all control of the Philippines to the United States in just a little bit of time. So we go from there into Cuba. So it says Dewey smashes Spain's fleet. This here's the World, and this here's the Chicago Daily Tribune. So now we're going into the Caribbean, and that is where Cuba is located. So we have superior naval forces, where our Navy is better than Spain's. However, we don't have enough army. So many of the recruits who were not trained well enough, they didn't have adequate supplies. We have seen this before in different things that we've talked about, whether it's Russia, the American Revolution. We've talked about what it's like training these people that are basically farmers that are not very good soldiers. Most of the officers that are doing the training are actually Civil War heroes. They're old Civil War heroes who didn't actually do training. What they do is they actually just tell stories rather than actually teach the soldiers what to do. Now, I'm sure some of you like teachers that just do that. They just tell you stories and you guys don't have to learn. But then when it comes time to take the test, you're like, hold up, wait a minute. We didn't learn anything. How am I supposed to do this? Now take that situation and apply it to a battle situation where you're like, cool, we don't have to run and do all this stuff and learn all this stuff. But then they give you a gun and they say, all right, go fight. And you're like, hold up, we didn't learn anything. Yeah, you're likely going to die in that situation. So, yeah, it wasn't necessarily good for the United States forces going to fight in the Caribbean. Also, the Caribbean has a completely different climate than what our people are used to. It's a lot more humid. All right, so what we get introduced to is a new person and a new group. You have Teddy Roosevelt leading the Rough Riders. All right, these Rough Riders, it's a cavalry, so they are horseback. And they achieve a very important victory at Kettle Hill that makes way for taking San Juan Hill, which is a very important battle for us to win over in Cuba. So once we've taken over, Spain is going to surrender to us, and we're going to sign something called the Treaty of Paris. Now, this treaty becomes highly debated because what's going to happen? Are we going to take over these places that wanted freedom from Spain, or are we just going to slide in and take Spain's spot as the country that is controlling them? So you have people debating on both sides that they should have independence, or that the United States, since we helped them out, should kind of have sovereignty over them. And again, the idea is imperialism, where you have these big, strong countries taking over weaker ones. So this is what happens. We gain Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Cuba gets freed from Spain's control. However, we actually are going to gain a little bit more control over Cuba than what they would like. So this is where we're at up to this point. All right? So what we have is we bought Alaska in 1867. We stole Hawaii in 1898. We gained Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines in 1899, all as a result of the Treaty of Paris. Now we'll get into we're going to talk a little bit more about Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines and Cuba in the next couple of videos, just to kind of understand why, or is it the next video? Yeah, it's all in the next video We're going to look at kind of why we wanted those places. We're going to look at Cuba there as well. So again, you have Puerto Rico here, you have Cuba here. Cuba we did not gain. We do eventually get the U.S. Virgin Islands. We have Alaska here. You got Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands here. And then you got a bunch of these little islands that we end up taking from Spain as well. But the main ones, you got Guam, Philippines, Hawaii, Alaska, Puerto Rico. Alright, so those are the main ones that we're going to be looking at. And in the next video, we're going to be talking about us actually gaining control and what it means for our country to have control of those other nations.